The key to correction symbols and comments should be fairly clear. There are, however, one or two symbols that are not on there because when I was making this up, I didn't even think of looking under the symbols thing to put that in. One of those is the paragraph symbol. Usually, not all the time, I'll put the word new before it. You need to break that paragraph up into more than one paragraph. Sometimes it might be two. One person had a paragraph that was literally like a page and a half long, and it had more than one idea in it. We're going to talk about, paragraph structure in just a moment, kind of briefly, because we have what is this, 800, 600, 500 page book to go through in 3 hours. So let's briefly, like 20 minutes. If we need to spend longer, we can, because I can always send you a link to, another lecture, online. I don't want to do that though. So, papers. What's the purpose of a title? Some of you had really good titles. Some of you had really bad titles. What's a title do? Anybody?
Lets the reader know what the topic of the essay might include.
It tells the reader where you're going. It's a roadmap. It's a brief roadmap, okay? But it tells the reader something about what the paper is going to be. So, for example, topic 1, which not many people did. I don't remember how many. There were maybe 2 or 3. It's the one about recovery for the reader in Chronicles of Prydain. The Chronicles of Prydain as a means of recovery. That would be a good title. Okay? Or J.R.R. Tolkien's idea of recovery in the Chronicles of Prydain. That would be pretty good. Notice you're telling me Tolkien, recovery, and the title. Almost all the time, with a few exceptions, you want your title to include the title of what it is you're writing about. Okay? So, for example, I can't because I didn't print it out. In the exam sheet that I posted earlier, I tell you that in your title you can just refer to the Bartimaeus trilogy. So I give you like 9 different options, all right? And one of them is, what do you think is the theme? So, just off the top of my head, sacrifice as the theme, as the overarching theme of the Bartimaeus trilogy. That's a title that pretty much tells your reader exactly what's going to be in it. What could be the problem, however? What must your title then do in relation to the rest of the paper? That's what the paper's got to be about, right? You can't say sacrifice as the main theme in the Bartimaeus trilogy and then compare and contrast 2 characters. 1 or 2 of you did something like that. You chose a title. You had the topic to the left and above the title, and you weren't writing about that topic. The maturation process in the Chronicles of Prydain, and you talked about something else entirely, okay? So that presents a problem, so you don't want to do that, okay? Introduction. I know it seems really simple. Sorry if I'm belittling your intelligence. I don't mean to. I did this with all 4 of my classes. I did this with my upper division English majors, okay? I think there were 2 or 3 D's in here. My upper division English majors, their first exam, there were, out of 16 people, over half the class had D's or F's. These are English majors. They're supposed to know how to write. And several of them wrote worse than the worst writers in this class. Okay, so don't feel bad. If you got a D, I wouldn't sweat it too much. I mean, I wouldn't go, yeah, this is great. I can, write on. I wouldn't do that. But So, introduction. What do you do in the introduction? Louder. Say it.
You introduce that.
You introduce. Anybody know what the word introduce literally means? What it comes from? It comes from two Latin words. Intro, which means beginning, and the deuce part comes from the Latin docere, which means to teach. It's where we get the duke in educate. Okay? So, it's leading into teaching. What are you doing? You're teaching, you're preparing your reader for what is to come. Again, as with the title, the introduction had better be followed by everything that's kind of in the introduction. Again, one or two people, it's like they wrote an introduction for one topic, and while they were writing the paper, their eye slipped down to the next topic. So they write an introduction, for example, about the process of maturation, but the paper is about life lessons. Well, life lessons can be part of the process of maturation, but that's not what either of those two topics discuss. Okay? So, you introduce what you're going to write about. You give the reader the ideas, and you conclude that with the thesis. Okay? What's a thesis? Anybody?
Like your argument?
Yeah, I was going to say, have any of you gotten in an argument in the last week?
Yes.
I heard no and I heard yes. My first class, which is Monday evenings, I asked them that question. Nobody said yes. I was like, you guys are a bunch of flipping angels. If you haven't gotten in an argument last week. So when you get in an argument with a friend.
I don't argue, I just clear.
Okay. We'll leave a list. When you're a real person and you get in an argument with a friend, what do? Do you just talk like this? Everybody's calm, peaceful, happy. No. I don't know about you. You get on your face. Why?
Because you want to be heard.
You want to be heard. Okay? So what else do you do? What am I doing right now? Raising my voice. Okay? What's the purpose of that? What do you mean you want to be heard, Joy?
You want them to get your point of view. Like you want them
Exactly. You want to be sure they understand where you're coming from. Your thesis is the exact same thing. I should never read a thesis and go, I wonder what he means. I wonder what his or her position is on this topic. Your thesis kind of ought to, metaphorically, reach out from the paper, grab me around the neck, slap me across the face. Why? That means it'll be clear and it'll be strong. Okay? You never want there to be any doubt as to what your position is. Which is why, when you're writing an argument paper, which is what these are, you have an argument. The life lessons topic. In the course of these novels, what life lessons does Taryn learn? Okay? So, what would be a good thesis? Now, a boring thesis would be Taryn learns several life lessons in the Chronicles of Prydain. That would be a boring thesis, and that would be a not very good thesis. It's a thesis, but I would write there weak. Why? How can it be stronger? What life lessons does Taryn learn? You could include them in the thesis. Or you could even make a value judgment. You can get opinionated. Because that's what an argument is, right? It's your opinion about something. And you could say, Alexander, the author, or Lloyd Alexander shows Taryn learning the lessons of, okay, for what purpose? I wrote this at the end of somebody's paper. Somebody had almost a great thesis for their very last sentence. And I was like, you should have had this at the beginning. But I kind of rewrote it. And I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but it was something like, Alexander has Taryn learn the lessons of, and there were a couple, so that the reader will also learn those same lessons. Okay? Because that, even though you might not have put it in those words, that's what you really meant by that. Same thing with the maturation process, about how one grows up and such. Okay? So that thesis needs to be strong and it needs to be clear. All right? Then you have the body paragraphs, all the paragraphs that come after that. Now, you might have been taught in high school or in 1010 or 1020, I don't care where, but you might have been taught an essay's got to have 5 paragraphs. Bullshit. It doesn't have to have 5 paragraphs. It can have 6. If it's a short essay, it can have 3. 600 to 900 words isn't really a short essay. Okay? It's not a really long essay. Pick up a journal of some kind, a column in a newspaper, and they're multiple paragraphs. They're not much more than 900 or 1,000 words, a lot of those articles. Okay? So you need multiple paragraphs. Well, how is a paragraph structured? A paragraph is like a mini essay. Okay? An essay is made up of a bunch of mini essays. Topic sentence comes first. Topic sentence determines everything that comes afterwards. That is, everything that comes after the topic sentence is designed to refer back to and support that topic sentence. For the paragraph, the topic sentence is the same as the thesis for the paper. Okay? So, one topic sentence per paragraph, though. You don't want to, the printing exam. You don't want to have a topic sentence for a paragraph that says, in book 3, Taryn does something. And then in the middle of the paragraph, in book 4, Taryn, because you just introduced a new kind of main idea. Now, you can say, just as in book 3, where Taryn learns, and then you can refer to something from book 4, but you don't want to introduce a new idea there. Okay? So, one main idea per paragraph. Right? Topic sentence, quotations. Each paragraph probably should have a quotation. Not all the time, but probably. Okay? And what about the quotation? That's what all this stuff is. Quotations have got to be introduced. What that means is, here's your paper, you're blah-blahing along, and you end a sentence. You then don't want, and then you blah-blah along again. You don't want a quotation sitting there between 2 of your sentences. Why? Because it's floating in space. It's like the other place. Okay? And you don't have Ptolemy's gate to get to the other place. It needs to be anchored to one of the sentences. It can be anchored to the sentence that comes before, or it can be anchored by a phrase that comes after. So you can literally begin a sentence like this with a quotation, said Bartimaeus. You can play all kinds of ways with that. You can break up the quotation and have the introductory tag in the middle. Okay? But you have to have some kind of introductory comment. And most of you actually did. But what you did after that nice introductory phrase, you put a period. And usually what I did is I put a colon. See, a period ends an idea. A colon connects 2 independent clauses. All right? Okay, we're introduction, introduce quotations, contextualize. That is, your quotations need to be in some kind of context. Who walked in? Thomas? Can we get your... Right there. I don't know if I can pull this one. No, I can't. I had somebody in one of my classes, and they were all the same, substantive quotation, 10 to 30 lines, 10 to 30 words. And I had one student who, actually, this is my upper division English course, had a 3-word quotation. And it was like, yes, he did. And there was no context. I'm like, he who, and what did he did? What does this mean within, the play and such, okay? So you've got to put every quotation kind of in context. That's part of the introducing it, okay? What else? It needs to be relevant. If you're including a quotation, say, about the theme of sacrifice in the Chronicles of Prydain, you don't want to talk about Gurgi's desire for his never food-ending wallet, unless the quotation is about Gurgi offering it to the 3 witches, because that's a form of sacrifice. But if you don't want to say, ENGL was suddenly his normal size, because I'm going to put, well, what does this have to do with the topic? Every time I'll put that kind of comment, okay? Lastly, citation. Most of you didn't have problems with your citations, other than one, and I'm thinking it had to be an electronic version. It was just really, really weird. You had the book, and then you had a number, a dot, and then a number. I'm like, is this some Bible version of Prydain, and it's chapter 7, verse 3 in it? Or because some electronic versions, lines are numbered. And so you can go paragraph, and then the line number within the paragraph. But there was nothing that indicated it was an electronic version. If you're using an electronic version, your works cited page needs to indicate that. Okay? For this next exam, I gave you the works cited page on that exam sheet. I'm not going to tell you what to do with it. I shouldn't have to. If you're not smart enough to figure out, you shouldn't be here. Okay? But I gave you what the works cited page should exactly look like. All right? Okay. 20 minutes. If you have questions, send me an email. See me during office hours. But keep these. Okay? Don't destroy them yet. Because I know some of you want to just, I've literally had students walk, after I gave them to them, walk out ripping them and, expletives going down the hallway, my name taken in vain and such. Which have at it as much as you want. But hold on to them at least until the end of the semester. Because between now and the end of the semester, I may give you an opportunity to revise. I may, not will. May, not will. Okay? Or another opportunity might arise from them. What I've done in one previous class, which I'm not going to tell you now what I did. Okay. Gee, I had that book pulled out for a reason. So, we need to try to do Ptolemy's Gate tonight. But I actually, just really, really briefly, want to go back for a moment, and I know you probably don't have this book with you, and that's fine, to Bartimaeus's last words, let's say, with Nathaniel at the end of the Golem's Eye. Okay? Nathaniel explains to him what he's discovered. Duval was behind it all, so he believes. Okay? And they talk about that. They talk about the break-in. They talk about Kitty because Bartimaeus lets Nathaniel know Kitty died. Makes him think Kitty died and such. Okay? And Nathaniel's kind of, curious about her. Page 554. You spent time with her. Did she talk much to you? Nope. Too frightened? Oh no, too disdainful. So they keep talking. Okay? So, Bartimaeus says, page 555. Well, all's well that ends well. You got everything you wanted. Now, that means within the context, one, of this novel, he's gotten everything he wanted. Right? Because what did he get? He found out the perpetrators. He found out who was responsible for all the destruction going on in central London. It wasn't the resistance. It was Duval and the Golem, et cetera, et cetera. He found out some about the resistance, but not everything. Okay? So, you got everything you wanted, and he looks around at the new apartment that Nathaniel has, right? Because he's living high now. Look at the size of this place. You can fill it with all the silk and silver you desire. Not only that, you're more powerful than ever. The Prime Minister is once more in your debt, and you're out from under Whitwell's thumb. Yep, it's true. You're also completely friendless and alone. Welcome to power. And all your colleagues fear you and will want to do you harm. Now, why is Bartimaeus telling him this? What's he really mean? Your colleagues fear you and want to do you harm. He's saying, watch your back. Watch your back. If you get too powerful, the Prime Minister will get paranoid, find an excuse to bump you off. But hey, we've all got troubles. What a charming insight, Nathaniel says. I'm full of them. And if you don't want any more, I advise you to dismiss me on the instant. Your 6 weeks are up. That marks the end of my current bond. My essence aches. I'm tired. Okay? So, 556. Nathaniel tells Bartimaeus he actually has plans for the evening. Why does he offer this information? Why is it significant or important? And what are those plans for the evening? Anybody remember? Got a play to go to that night? Quentin Makepeace's latest production. He says, I'm not entirely alone. I am off to the theater this evening. My good friend Quentin Makepeace has invited me to a gala premiere of his latest play. Okay, gala premiere means only his closest friends are invited to this. Oh, how desperately thrilling. It is. Well, are you ready? Yep. I bid the magician John Mandrake farewell. This is Bartimaeus speaking. May he live long and never summon me again. By the way, notice something there? Bartimaeus asks Nathaniel, you notice what I just did there? What? I didn't say Nathaniel. Because I see you more as Mandrake now. The boy who was Nathaniel's fading, almost gone. Good. I'm glad you see some sense at last. I'm glad you see sense at last. So, farewell, Bartimaeus. Farewell. He spoke, I went. I didn't have time to tell him he kind of missed the point. What was the point? Because that point leads to this book. Joy, what was the point?
Changing.
How? By the way, this is an exam topic question.
Nathaniel to John.
Keep going.
Calling her the magician.
Keep going. What's the difference between Nathaniel,
Power
no
hungry.
last name, and John Mandrake? Power hungry, what else?
No honor.
No honor.
At the end of the first book, he says, stay true to yourself or something.
Says, don't let what's good in you go away. You know. Now he says, the one I used to know as Nathaniel, the one who would look out for others, almost gone. Notice, he's not all the way gone. He's mostly gone. Okay? So, we open with Ptolemy's Gate. Do we know who Ptolemy is? At the beginning of this, I see one head doing this and another head doing this. Who is he? How do we know who he is?
Bartimaeus' favorite master.
Okay.
Yeah, because he takes on his form.
He takes on his form. Do we know anything other than that? Have we been informed in book 1 or book 2 anything else about him? Nope. In fact, what do we do in this book? How does this book begin?
He was in war or something?
Part 1, Alexandria, 125 BC. We're not in Kansas anymore. We're not in the present. Okay? The Ptolemy, by the way, there were a bunch of them. There were a bunch of guys named Ptolemy in Alexandria and ancient Greece, etc. More than likely a real character. Stroud, right? Yeah. Stroud, I get my authors all mixed up. Stroud does do an awful lot of research, especially for this book. I mean, when he's referring to places, people, things from the past, he's got them all down. Okay? So, what do we see in that opening chapter? Notice it starts with assassins.
They were in war.
Okay? Was it really a war? Who are the assassins out to get? Bartimaeus? No, he's a demon. Ptolemy. They're out to get Ptolemy. And Bartimaeus saves him. But here he's not called Bartimaeus. He's called, page 10, Rekyt. Rekhyt. Okay? Chapter 1, that's kind of a prologue. Chapter 1, times change. Why? Then, first chapter, the Rekyt would be willing to sacrifice for his leader, for his master. Here, page 11, right in the middle of the page. But that was then. He's thinking about it. So it's almost like that Alexandria 120. That's Bartimaeus while he's squished on the pavement of the road in London, thinking back to the good old days when he had a decent master. Now, lying in the middle of a midnight road, flat on my back and getting flatter. Why? What's happened to him? He's weak. Do we know at this point why he's weak? That is, have we been introduced to so far in that opening prologue or whatever? Have we been introduced to how long he's been back on Earth? No, because he got sent away at the end of this book. But we're going to find out pretty quickly he's been back on Earth 2 years without being sent back to the other place to recharge his batteries. Okay? So, he describes how he got in the predicament he's now in, which we're going to skip. Okay? And we're told, page 14 and 15, what form he's now taken. Dear me, a damsel in distress. I should have mentioned that in contrast to all the centaurs and ogres at my side, I'd been wearing a human guise that night. Happened to be that of a girl, slender, long dark hair, feisty expression, not based on anybody in particular, of course, which means, of course, it is based on somebody in particular. So why is he taking Kitty's appearance?
To get his master mad.
Yeah, we find that out later. Well, that's the surface level reason. That is, that's the reason he admits to. What's another reason?
He respects her too.
Is it just respect? What did he tell us in the first book about the young boy whose form he sometimes takes?
He loves
He
him.
loved him. Is there a love connection between Bartimaeus and Kitty? I don't mean between in the sense that it's reciprocated. And I don't mean sex or romance or anything like that. But is there a bond? Yes, there is. Because what did we see Bartimaeus and Kitty do together in the Golem's Eye? Towards the end. Not quite the end. Well, to the Golem.
Together.
And they destroyed it together. For what purpose? To rid London? Partially. Who was saved directly as a result? Nathaniel was. So At that point, what do both of them think of John Mandrake, a.k.a. Nathaniel?
I think I live.
Sorry, Pisa.
Oh, now.
Well, I mean, no, then, when they save him, what does Kitty think of John Mandrake? Is she doing it for him? She says not. I think there's probably a little more there. Reread it and you might see more. So he takes the form of people he loves. Again, not in some weird kind of romantic way. In a sense of respect, admire. I mean, when he describes her as being feisty, does feisty just mean, and if I were in Connecticut, is it Connecticut? Yeah, I think it is. No, it's New York. Some idiot lawmaker wants to pass a law. If I were in Connecticut, I could be arrested for saying this. Because she's bitchy, lawmaker wants to pass a law that if you call somebody else a bitch, you just committed a crime.
I feel like that's gender neutral now.
There's a little thing called the First Amendment. It doesn't matter. You know, freedom of speech. You know, people talk about hate speech. Free.
It's only hate speech when you're directly threatening somebody. What is hate?
There is no hate speech. According to the Constitution, there's no idea of hate speech. Okay, it's the First Amendment guarantees protection of all speech unless it's violence directed against an individual or yelling fire in a crowded theater. Okay,
Sure.
so she's got this feisty expression that he kind of likes. Okay, so he's got all these other creatures around him. Who are they? The centaurs and such. Other demons and such. Okay? We're going to skip a bunch. Chapter 2, we're going to skip a whole lot. We're not going to talk about all the yellow sticky, well, we might the sticky notes. We won't all the folded back pages that I have in here. Chapter 2, we meet up with John Mandrake. We won't call him Nathaniel yet. We will call him Nathaniel by the end of the novel because he does return. Nathaniel's reborn, so to speak. And he's in his house, apartment, and he has his assistant with him, Piper and such. Okay? And we hear them talk. What are they talking about? And in talking about this, what is Stroud providing us, the reader, with?
We're talking about work.
Okay? What's John's new job?
Information.
Information. What does that mean, an information minister? Yeah. Whenever you have a society who has a minister of information, what do you automatically know that really is? It's a minister of disinformation or misinformation. Okay? In the United States, we do not have a cabinet level secretary of information. The press secretary is not a cabinet level position. Does not have to be approved by the Senate. All the members of the cabinet have got to be approved by the Senate. Okay? Other countries do have ministries of information, like Russia still has an information ministry. North Korea still has an information ministry. China still has an information ministry. China's is, makes Russia's and North Korea's look like kindergartners. Okay? Witness the recent flap with the NBA and tweets, oddly enough. So what are they talking about? Talking about work, but what does work mean? Look at page 21. It beggars belief. The war is going badly. The empire is teetering on the brink, and all our prime minister can think about is plays and parties. He's gotten another invitation. What that really means is he hasn't RSVP'd. Prime minister wants to do what? Keep everybody heard of the phrase, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. He wants to keep John Mandrake not too far away because he knows how powerful he is. All right, keep it with the documents. I'll take it along. Posters seem okay. So he looks at one of them. He says, let's see here. Got a pen? Let's try this. Try fight for freedom in the British way. Make a snappy poster, right? Doesn't mean anything, but it sounds good. Ms. Piper, I think it's profound. Why does she think it's profound? Why'd you snicker?
Just like because she's trying to suck up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's exactly it. Don't be shy. Jump in. She's sucking up to him. Okay? So, if Miss Piper, we're told, regarded her employer with more than a little wide-eyed admiration, she was by no means alone among the women of the elite. John Mandrake was an attractive young man, and the scent of power hung about him, sweet and intoxicating like honeysuckle in the evening air. Of course, that's probably his aftershave. He was of medium height, slender of body, swift and confident in action. His pale, slim face presented an intriguing paradox combining extreme youth. He's 17 years old, and he's a government minister. Not one like his master had been, a low-level nobody. He's one of the most important ones. With experience and authority. Okay? Top of the next page. Giving a little, filling out his character. To peers and inferiors alike, he was courteous, charming at all times, somewhat remote, as if distracted. Mandrake wore his dark hair close in a military crop, close along the sides, short on the top. Conscious innovation to honor the men and women still at war. Had been successful. Spies noted that among commoners. He's the most popular magician. Why? Because he kind of identifies with the troops. Who are the troops? The commoners. We could talk about Washington and politics. Who goes fights the wars in the United States?
Soldiers.
Yeah, soldiers do. But where are they brought from? Who volunteers?
The people.
Louder. Poor people. Not necessarily. Not all poor people. I've got a friend in California. She's not poor by any means. I mean, she's not rich or anything. But two of her sons. One in the Marines, one in the Army, one in the Coast Guard, and I think the other one's training to be a firefighter or something like that. Okay? So, not necessarily all the poor. Who, generally speaking, does not volunteer for the military?
That 1%.
Members of Congress's children. Though there are some. Those who do, who are children of members of Congress, 99% of the time, why? Because that member of Congress also served. Okay? So, he does this to identify. We're told he's considered by his rivals to be formidably, indeed dangerously talented. Following his promotion to information minister, they responded accordingly. Each attempted assassination had been cursorily rebuffed. Okay, each implies what? More than one. Gin failed to return. Booby traps were bounded on the cinder. Hexes snapped. At last tiring of this, Mandrake made a point of publicly challenging any hidden enemy to come forward and tackle him in magical combat. It's like he goes out to the center of London. He goes to Hyde Park Corner. It's a place called Speaker's Corner, where you can go and you can say whatever you want. Okay? It's like he goes there, strips down and says, come on, take me on. You and me. Okay? Magical combat, though, implies what? I'm not going to get hurt. Because I'm going to have my demons. They're going to be the ones, it's like Pokemon. Okay? Ooh, I never thought about that before. Wow. It really is an awful lot like Pokemon. Okay? So, they keep talking, and Piper talks about the discontent of the commoners. And John, bottom of 25, 26, asks her to explain, it's not like they're throwing rocks at windows and stuff, overturning cars and such. She says, it's the look in their face when the police arrive and such. Okay? He says, I need more. And then one of his demons comes in, page 27. And he says, because he's sending demons out, because he's still trying to infiltrate what? The resistance. He knows it's still out there. And the demon says, these young commoners, middle of 27, they knew me for what I am. That is, he was disguised as another commoner, another young person. As a demon? How? How could you tell? Get out, vile demon. We hate you and your dangling yellow crest. And John's like, what yellow crest? You can't see it, he says, but it's there on the 6th and 7th plane. So if John couldn't see it, how could they see it? He can't even see it with those magical lenses. And these commoners could see it without any magical lenses. You're quite sure? You didn't let your disguise slip? Nope. Okay. Page 29, skipping a little more. They keep talking about these commoners sighting demons. Piper says, these are the unauthorized demon sightings of the last 6 months. 43. As far as the demons go, no pattern. We've had afrits, jinn, imps, and mites all spotted. But when you look at the commoners, most of those who do this are children. Interesting parallel between this series and the Lockwood series. In the Lockwood series, only children can see the ghosts. So only children are what are called the investigators. They're the ones, they work for investigative agencies like Private Eyes. They're the ones who are sent to places that have ghosts to get rid of the ghosts. And pretty much when you reach a certain age, generally it's about 14 or 15, for some it's a little bit older, you lose that ability to see ghosts. So when you start having the difficulty of seeing them, that's when it's time to get out of the job. Because you don't want to be in a house full of ghosts and not see one, because if one touches you, you die. Okay? In that series. So, most are children. Most of those children are young. In 30 cases, the witnesses were under 18. What's that, 70%? Over half of those, the witnesses were under 12. That is, half of those 30, they were under 12. They're being born with it, with the power to see. John, and who knows what else? What's he implying? Who knows what else?
If they can see, what's to say they can't do other things?
What if they learn magic? What does that do to the proverbial balance of power? It tips it upside down. Because commoners are where on the power scale? Magicians are at the top, so magicians what? But they want to keep it that way. They want to maintain the status quo. Okay? Go back for just a moment. I know you don't have any books, so don't worry about it. To the very end, the last chapter. Jacob Hirneck and his family are leaving England to go off to Bruges. Why? No magicians there. It's normal, commoners rule. And he's like, come on, kitty, come with us. She's like, no, I got to stay here. Why? Because the demon, Bartimaeus, he told me some stuff. He's like, you're listening to a demon? And she says, yes, I'm listening to a demon. Why? Because here's what he said. He talked about the past, about patterns repeating themselves, about the rise and fall of the magicians through history. It happens, Jacob, time and time again. No one manages to break out of the cycle. Not commoners, not demons, not magicians. We're all stuck fast. What's the cycle? The cycle is commoners rise to power, they become magicians, those beneath them become commoners, the magicians are in power, they fall, commoners rise, and that goes on. And who's caught in the middle, so to speak? Demons. So why does Bartimaeus tell her all this? Does he plant an idea in her mind? Okay. So she's now got that idea kicking around in her mind. Can we break the cycle? Can we stop this pattern from continuing? Chapter 3. My few hours' rest, Bartimaeus, had done me little good. How could it? It had been 2 whole years. So John's now 17. Bartimaeus was brought back when John was 15. How old was John at the end of the first book, the beginning of the second book? 14. He was supposed to let Bartimaeus go forever. He was never supposed to call him back. And now he's been back for 2 years. And what's happening? He's wasting away. Okay? So, he tells us what's happening, page 32. How weak he is. He's no longer a good slave. No master in his right mind. Well, that's the problem. Okay? Page 35. He's thinking back about his master, the stuff of Lovelace. Okay? 36, 37. More about John and his personality, especially since he became minister, let's call him by his real title, Minister of Propaganda. 36 and 37. Officially, his duties were to do with propaganda, devising clever ways of selling the war to the British people. Propaganda is always what? Louder?
War.
No, it's used to benefit war. Is it always true?
No.
No, there's always an element of falsehood in it. It's always the government trying, because the government ultimately is the greatest power of propaganda, though it's not the only promoter of propaganda. Where else do we see propaganda?
Mainstream media.
Media, corporations. Another word for propaganda is advertising. They want you to think. You really, Apple just came out with 2 new phones. They want you to think. You really need the new, 11 Pro Max. Even though last year, 1 year ago, you got the 10 XR Max or whatever it was. You paid $1,000 for that one, and now you're going to pay $1,000. Are they really that different? Okay, the new one's got 3 cameras instead of 1. It's got a little bit more power. It's got some new software. It's shinier. So now it's old, and here I am with a 4-year-old 7 Plus. It's like an old rotary dial phone that I stick in my pocket and such. So, unofficially at the Prime Minister's behest, he continued much of his internal affairs police work. So, Minister of Propaganda, but what's he doing on the sly? Spy work. Because that's what internal affairs is. Operating an unsavory network of surveillance, human spies. Okay? So Bartimaeus says, as a result of that, there was a dismal sea change in his personality. By cruel paradox, he began to summon me more and more frequently and for less and less reason. Why? Mainly, no doubt, because he wished to minimize the chances of my being summoned by another magician. Why would he be worried about Bartimaeus being summoned by another magician? Because he knows his name. Okay? His whole life was work. He was now surrounded by a gang of vicious, hot-eyed maniacs, the other ministers. I don't know about you, but I think it's in this book that Stroud, he kind of, lets the veil drop about some of his own political leanings and ideas. And I don't mean political leanings right and left. I mean attitude towards government, like anarchy reign, man. Okay? Most of whom wished him harm. His only close associate, the hack playwright Quentin Makepeace. What's a hack? A hack writer.
False.
No, not false.
Where he has other people do his work for him.
No, that's a ghostwriter.
Like a hack job is like half finished.
Kind
I
of.
know how to use it in context, but I don't
Right.
know
Use it
how
in
to
context.
say it, like,
Use it in context.
that, like just being like, the guy's a hack. He doesn't really know what he's doing. He's just out there.
The person who churns out one novel after another.
And they're not even.
They're the same novel, just
Yeah.
different characters' names. Most Romance novels, Harlequin romance. My mother-in-law had a room this size full of them when we had to move her out of her old house. Almost this size, literally. Okay? It's the same stupid story.
No.
Sorry, it is. It's the same stupid story.
Someone
Different
more
names, different settings, different heaving bosoms, different long-haired hunky men, you know, the whole 9 yards. Okay? So, he says that Quentin Makepeace is a hack. He churns out one play after another. And we didn't see any of those plays in the Golem's Eye, correct? We see one in here. Actually, I think we see two, okay? In just the little brief scene that we get, you can tell this is really bad stuff, okay? So, to survive in this friendless world, Mandrake cloaked his better qualities under layers of smarm and swank. What's he mean by his better qualities?
Being polite, even though you're not in a position of power, or you're in a position of power.
Well, we're told that he is polite to others. He's charming. Are these qualities, the ones that he cloaks, are these qualities that magicians would find good, like Bartimaeus does? No, they're probably the kinds of qualities that Lovelace warned him about in the first book. Notions such as honor, loyalty, friendship. How many friends, real friends, not social media nonsense, okay, and not work associates, real friends, does John Mandrake have? Yeah, none. Who becomes his friends?
Slaves.
Slaves. Kitty. And Bartimaeus. When Bartimaeus becomes his friend, is he still his slave? I mean, we could jump to the end of the book, right? Because what do they do? You get about as close a relationship as you can have. It's closer than marriage. Yeah, marriage has sex. This is even closer than sex, right? Where, I can't tell my wife, come inside my body. Take control of me. That's what he does. There ain't no going back, after that, so to speak, okay? So he alludes, but he doesn't explain. All his old life, years with the Underwoods, his vulnerable existence as the boy Nathaniel, the ideals he'd once espoused, like honor, like nobility, like truth, like loyalty, like responsibility, was buried away deep down. Why? Why don't magicians value those?
Because they'll get you killed
They'll get you killed.
by other magicians.
What else? What can every one of those be looked at as? A weakness. It's a sign of weakness. Every link with his childhood was severed, except for me. I don't think he could bring himself to break this last connection. Now that's some interesting psychologizing going on. Because what's Bartimaeus really saying there?
He's
He
holding on to his childhood by having me here.
Bingo. I'm a reminder. I'm a connection. He keeps me here to do what? To keep him anchored. In other words, if Bartimaeus leaves, and leaves for good, what's going to happen to John Mandrake? Or let me rephrase that. What's going to happen to Nathaniel?
He's not going to exist.
He will totally become John Mandrake. All that old part of him will be totally gone. Okay? This is one of the reasons why I think they do what they do at the very end of the novel. Okay? So, 40-41. Bartimaeus is still talking, and so what he says on those 2 pages, so what's he start to do? 2 years are almost up now. He says, I did my best to get to him. That is, I tried to get on his bad side. I tried to rile him up. Why? So he would send me back. Because he's getting weaker and weaker and weaker. How does he do that? I take the form of Kitty. I mean, that really angers him. What's one major reason why it bothers Nathaniel so much?
Because he thinks Kitty died for him.
That just eats away. She died to save him. And he's like, I don't get that. Why would somebody do that? That doesn't compute with my magician, kind of logic. Her assumed death still weighed on his conscience. I knew this because he always reacted to my echo of her face with a reddening of his own. He'd get all angry and sheepish, assertive and embarrassed at the same time. Didn't make him treat me any better. Notice, but he still doesn't. It's like he wants to get that visual reaction. Okay? Several commoners had gathered around the ruined post office. That is, we're now back at the very present where Bartimaeus is. Were engaged in passionate debate. They resisted the efforts of a lone policeman to make them return to their homes. No doubt about it, the people were growing restless, which turned my thoughts to Kitty. She hadn't died in battle with the golem 3 years before. Instead, after acting with unusual selflessness and bravery to save Mandrake's worthless hide, she'd slipped away. I knew she was still close by, working against magicians. I hope she's keeping out of trouble. Chapter 4. The demon saw Kitty. The moment she moved, etc., etc. Okay? So we're going to skip a bunch. Who's Kitty working for? The guy with a bunch of books.
Yeah, Mr. Button.
Mr. Button. Okay? And what does she get out of working for Mr. Button? She gets to look at the books. I mean, put yourself in this world situation. Who wouldn't want an opportunity to get a rifle around in that guy's library? I used to when I taught my Harry Potter course in London, which was about every other year. We would always go to a castle way up in the north of England, about an hour from Edinburgh. It took about 4.5 hours to get to the castle. And it's the castle that's used in a lot of the films. It's where Harry learns how to fly and some other stuff. Anyways, the castle is owned by a family. They live in it year-round pretty much. Okay, but when you do a tour in the castle, you're going to go in the Duke of Northumberland's library. So think of this room and make it 4 times bigger. And make the ceiling, twice as high as it is. Okay, so about 30 feet tall ceilings. And have on all 4 walls solid, maple, walnut, and oak bookcases and books, leather bound, from floor to ceiling, so that there's a balcony that goes all the way around all the bookcases. And there's a ladder so you can get up and et cetera, et cetera.
No paperback?
No. No, but you'd go in and he'd have his desk where he does his work and picture of his family. I used to joke with my kids because he had a son right about my daughter's age, and we're like, Katie, come on, you're really cute. He's gorgeous, maybe we can work something out, But, you go in and you'd see, that this guy really worked in here. Papers on his desk, stuff like that. But the point is, you'd walk in there, and if you're someone who loves books, you just kind of go, can I just step beyond the road for a moment, just touch stuff. Okay? So, she's talking with Mr. Button, bottom of 55. He's talking about Trismegistus notes that succubi, and he's talking about kinds of demons. Okay? And he asks her, what was the name of that demon you were asking about? Bartimaeus, sir. Yes, that's it. Trismegistus has a reference to him in one of his tables of antique gins. It's somewhere in the appendix. Really? That's great. Thank you. So now she knows where to go to look to find out some information, which is what she's been trying to do for 2 years. All right? And then we go back to Alexandria, 126 BC. Okay? Actually, it's a year, I hadn't noticed that.
Is it a year later?
It's a year earlier. When you're in BC, you count down to 0. A year later would be 124 BC and then 123. This is the year before when the novel opened. Okay? And pages 60, 61, Ptolemy and Bartimaeus, under his other name, Reckitt, are talking and such. Okay?
How do you pronounce his other name?
Reckitt, Reckitt. The E is an A, sound like cafe. Okay. So Bartimaeus asks him, page 63, why are you doing this? Why are you taking all these notes? Why are you writing all this stuff down? And he tells him, I've read most of the manuscripts in the Great Library. What's the Great Library? The Great Library of Alexandria. One of the greatest losses of human knowledge in all of human history. It rivaled, at its height, the Library of Congress, the Bodleian Library, the British Library, all wrapped up into one. It had everything of the known world that had been written at the time. So all the Greek dramatists, etc., all the biblical, Old Testament biblical writers that had written by that time, it had everything, all right? It's gone, all of it. Don't know what happened to it, okay? So, he says, I've read all this stuff. They've got things about summoning, chastisement, blah, 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 blah. It seems to me this is the first of the first importance. I intend to write the definitive work on the subject, a book that will be read and admired forever. That is, the subject of the nature of demons. All that we have is how to enslave you, how to make you do things. We have nothing about what you are. My ambition surprises? Yeah. Why do you magicians, since when has a magician cared about our sufferings? See, that's the problem that is brought up in the first book. What does Bartimaeus tell us? To be bound, to be summoned from the other place to this place, binds me to a form, to a matter, and that's painful because he's a spirit, okay? There's no reason why you should. It's not in your interests. Notice Bartimaeus' logic. If it's not in one's self-interest, then why do something? Well, that describes who? The magicians. That describes them to a T. So when he talks about Nathaniel's better qualities, those better qualities are qualities that do what? Is it show emotion?
It separates him from the magicians.
Okay.
It's not just like bound by self-interest. It's
Keep going.
like
If it's not self-interest, it's what?
The willness of others.
Bingo. It's thinking of others. He's like, why do you want to think of others, man? Look out for yourself. Does that mean that that is also what demons do? In other words, is there this internal mechanism for both humans and demons that says, I'm number one? Because Ptolemy doesn't seem to show that.
Well, if demons are being forced into slavery, and two people that are like only about myself, you would think they would, like, as a protecting mechanism, they would have to only think of themselves.
True.
They're being summoned to a form that they're being put through pain. So in order to avoid that pain, they should avoid being summoned. Therefore, it's in the interest of themselves.
To try to stay in the other place.
Mm-hmm.
But because there's nothing that they can do in the other place that keeps them there because of whoever first came up with the spells, because we're never told that. Okay? So, it's not in your interest. Ptolemy, it is. If we remain ignorant and continue to enslave you rather than understand you, trouble will come from it sooner or later. How? Why?
Pretty bitter.
Okay. Well, what do we see happen let's jump to the end for a moment. What does some damn fool do? What damn fool idea does Quentin Makepeace or Hopkins essentially come up with? Let's bring the demons in and let's call the demon into us.
Take their power.
And then what do the demons do? I mean, initially they're kind of like you, but then they realize what?
It won't be as painful.
What happens to their pain?
It's gone.
It's gone.
Because they're still allowed to be their essence because they're not having to take a physical form, they're going into a physical form.
And what do? Food. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, dessert, appetizer. I mean, why go back to the other place
When I can rule here.
when I can rule here? Okay? Ptolemy, 1,000 years earlier, 2,000 years earlier, he's starting to. There's no alternative to this slavery. Each summon reps. He said, no, you're too pessimistic. Traders tell me of shamans far off among the northern wastes, that's Siberia, that's what's meant there, who leave their own bodies to converse with spirits in another world. Can you tell me anything about that other world, Bartimaeus? Sorry. To my mind, that's a much more courteous proceeding. Courteous. Mannerly. Why? Let's you and I leave our respective places and what? Let's meet at a neutral spot. Because anytime you force somebody to come to your place, what are you doing? You're saying, I've got the power. If the dean invites me to a chat in her office, that means I'm powerless, she has the power. Okay? Doesn't mean if I invite her to come to my office, I've got the power, because there's a difference between professor, dean, Can't fire me still, but, Anyways.
10 years.
Yep. Hard fought for, too. Okay? So, chapter 5. I'm not going nearly as fast as I need to. So, Mandrake starts to think he needs to let Bartimaeus go. In all logic, page 68, 69, he should let him go. But he found the thought distasteful. Quite why was hard to say. But his abuse was tiring, exasperating beyond measure. That is, Bartimaeus' verbal abuse. He just mouths off. Okay? But also oddly refreshing. How can verbal abuse be refreshing?
Me and my best friend roast each other all the time. That's usually like very friend status when you can pick on each other.
Sure.
And not like, have the other person angry as hell I am.
But you and your friend are what?
Equals.
Yeah. This is master-slave. And the slave keeps mouthing off. Here's a parallel. Parent-child. There are times, I will admit, got 4 kids, there are times, not as much when my kids were real little as when they were in their teens, and some of them are in their 20s now. Where every now and then one of them is smart off and I'd kind of go, it's pretty good. Actually, all of them, put me in my place pretty much all the time. I'm like, damn, I might as well be Bartimaeus. Okay? Mandrake lived in a world where true emotion skulked forever behind politely smiling masks. With Bartimaeus, he gets what? The real thing. He gets the real thing. Does Mandrake ever get to be the real thing with anybody else? Does he even with Bartimaeus? But Bartimaeus made no pretense of his dislike. The others, Ascabel and company, fawning, etc., Bartimaeus was as impertinent now as, they was first come. And then he thinks back to Bartimaeus and the form he takes. A dark-haired girl. Pretty. No prizes for guessing who this is. Ever since Kitty Jones had died, Bartimaeus had used her shape to mock him. Not without success. That is, we are being told this about inside Nathaniel's mind. Every time Bartimaeus does that, oh, it stings. It works. Even 3 years on, visualizing her face gave Mandrake a sharp pang in his side. Forget her. She's a traitor. Dead. Gone. Okay? Page 70. He's thinking about Gladstone at the bottom of 69. Ever since Gladstone, magicians have done their best to keep commoners unaware about demons, that's the magician's source of real power. But we're told, top of page 70, it's no longer the case. Each week, new reports, new news accounts of commoners seeing demons. Middle of the page. If commoners were being born with the power to see demons, the disruption that had lately plagued London could only get worse. Mandrake shook his head irritably. Why? He's got to figure out why this is happening. Okay. This, we're not told it, but this is what Bartimaeus was getting at when he had that final conversation with Kitty, okay, in the previous book. This is part of that cycle. The only reason commoners are able to rise up and overthrow the magicians is because after a period of time, they start being born with this ability. Jane Farrar shows up. Describe Jane Farrar. She works for the internal affairs, the spies.
She's kind of cruel.
Cruel or cool?
Cruel.
Cruel.
For slaves.
Okay, yeah, definitely to her slaves. Louder. Snooty. Well, snooty can be taken differently. If you're a snooty person too, that can be a positive thing. How's she physically appear?
Attractive.
She's a knockout. She's older than John, and therefore, because he's 17 years old and hormones are going crazy, he's attracted to her. And what? She knows it. She uses that against him repeatedly. Being the damn fool he is, he's not aware of it half the time. Okay? So, Bartimaeus finally makes it back to Mandrake, tells Piper, to tell Mandrake he needs to dismiss me. Bartimaeus doesn't. Page 84. So, he gives Bartimaeus a task. In his weakened, nearly non-existent state, find Hopkins. Now, we've heard of Hopkins in the previous book, right? Hopkins was the one who's helping the resistance find some things, told the resistance about the things in the vault at Westminster and such, but wasn't caught. Find Hopkins. Don't act or attack. We know you're weak. Just find out where he is. Find out what they're up to. Send word. Okay? Don't get involved. He's just asking him to do what? Be a spy. But don't do anything. Okay? So, he's a scholar, Bartimaeus. He's a pencil neck, weak, little, thin scholar, spends his time in libraries. You don't need to worry about it. He's not going to hurt you. When we get to the end, what do we find out about Hopkins already at this point in the novel?
He's got Farquhar in him.
He already has the quarrel in him. He's already possessed. Okay? So he tells him, I'm going to be at Westminster Hall. Come find me there. Kitty, next chapter, reads about Bartimaeus. Chapter 7. And I'm going to have to start zipping. By name of the demon, Sakar al-Jini, well, we have heard him say that several times, mentioned in Procopius and Michelot, middle-ranking Jinni of ancient standing, great ingenuity, no little power, that means a lot of power. First recorded in Uruk, that's ancient Iraq. Later in Jerusalem, fought at the Battle of Al-Arish against the Assyrians, Known masters have included Gilgamesh, as in the Epic of Gilgamesh, ancient Akkadian, like 4000 BC, Solomon, Zerbustable, Heraclius, Hauser. Bartimaeus' other names of power include Ngurso, which was a name he had when he was in Africa, Necho, and Rakit. And then he has a ranking. Why? Because I can't remember the guy's first name. Linnaeus was the one who came up with the classification of living things. All right? 17th century. And we're told he's dangerous and he's still extant. So Kitty's reading this. Yes.
What was the war in the beginning of the second book that he fought in?
Prague?
Yeah.
Yeah, he helped build the walls of Prague and such. Page 88. So, Kitty's thinking about Mandrake. He's head of information. And she thinks, man, I let this sucker live. But it had been the Ginny Bartimaeus who had encouraged her to do it. To act to spare the magician's life. And 3 years later, this still puzzled and intrigued her. Nothing that she had known about demons had quite prepared her for Bartimaeus' personality. Their conversations, framed against a backdrop of fear and danger, remained fresh in her mind, full of vitality, insight, and above all, an unexpected rapport. He had opened a door for her, little foreshadowing, giving her a glimpse of a historical process she had never guessed at. Thousands of years of magicians enslaving demons, forcing them to lend their power. Thousands of years during which time a dozen empires had risen to glory, waned, and crumbled. The pattern recurred again and again. Demons were summoned, magicians fought their way to wealth and fame. Stagnation set in, commoners discovered inherent abilities they didn't know they had. Notice, they discover that they have these abilities. It's not like they just suddenly start genetically X-menning them, Magical resilience built up through the generations that allowed them to rebel against their rulers. The magicians fell, new ones appeared, rinse and repeat. And she's thinking, can we stop it? Can I stop that process? Okay. Skip a bunch. She reads more about Rakit, end of the chapter 8. 3 of them. One an Afrit, another one a Ginny, and the third one, also named Nectanebo or Necho, energetic, unreliable, slave of Ptolemaeus of Alexandria. She's thinking it's got to be that one. Okay. Chapter 8, we're now at the Hall, Westminster. Prime Minister is throwing a big bash. Okay. And we're told what Mandrake's thinking while all this is going on, while the ball and such are going on. Page 97. Everything was out of control. The war, where's the war? Because it's not in Prague.
America?
The colonies, as we are affectionately called. Everything was out of control. The war of the commoners, the situation across the empire. Something decisive needed to be done, and soon, if the nation was to be saved. And he knows what needs to be done. What's the most powerful thing the magicians have at their disposal if they want to use it? The Staff of Gladstone. Why? Because they think a lot of Gladstone's power, meaning a spirit that he imprisoned in it, is still in that and it can still be used. It lay useless in the vaults below that very chamber, begging to be brought out by anyone with the talent to use it. Why is it there and not in the vaults at Westminster Abbey? Because what did Mandrake, like a fool, do in the previous book? He found it and returned it. He turned it over. If wielded effectively, it would destroy the rebels, cow Britain's enemies, send the commoners scampering back to work. But it needed a magician of the strongest level to command it. Not Rupert Devereux, right? And John's thinking, what? In all honesty, he didn't know. Maybe he was, except for Whitwell. Okay? So, we get this, the people sitting around. There's the Prime Minister, page 98. There's Jane Farrar, conspiratorial eyes and such. Jessica Whitwell, security minister. John's thinking, careful of her. Mr. Collins, newest member of the council. On Mandrake's right, Helen Malbindi, foreign minister. Carl Mortensen, war minister. You imagine that during times of peace, you don't have a war minister. Okay? And others. So they talk about the war. They talk about what's going on. They talk about what's going on with the commoners. That's Whitwell's kind of job. And page 102. As they keep talking, he looks at Jane Ferrari. Page 102. As always, he found it hard to resolve her strong personal allure, that is, her attraction, or his attraction to her, with the cool flintiness of her personality. He frowned. Curious fact that despite his self-control, despite his belief in the virtues of magician's rule, viewing someone like Ferrara close up made him feel deep down uncertain, hesitant, clouded by unease. But she was very beautiful. So she's a knockout. She's gorgeous to look at until you get up really close. But he doesn't mean physically really close. What's he mean?
Do you really get to know her?
And what's he see? It's a cold woman. She would just as soon gut you as say hello. But then he thinks, you know, all these people make me feel that way. Every one of them. What's that really mean? He doesn't trust. Perhaps this was the natural way. Had he ever met anyone who had acted otherwise? Back up one sentence. None of them ever acted against their own interests. To survive, he had done the same. What were Rakit and Ptolemy talking about? Acting not out of self-interest, but acting out of the interest of the other. Ptolemy is saying, I want to learn more about you. I want to learn about your nature. And I want to do maybe what those shamans up north are doing. Figure out how we can meet without me binding you, without me summoning you. And Bartimaeus is like, give it up, buddy. It'll never happen. So John thinks none of these people that he's around ever act outside of self-interest. Well, maybe this was the natural way. In other words, maybe it's part of our nature to be totally selfish. Had he ever met anybody who'd acted otherwise? Kitty's face pops into his mind. She's a traitor. What's that mean, she's a traitor? What did she try to do? Why? Doesn't like what they're doing. But she put herself in danger of going against the government, right? Is that acting out of self-interest? Well, you could say, a little bit at least it is. But if you're going to totally act out of self-interest, do you ever put yourself in danger? No, you don't. Because law of self-preservation says, I want to live. You put somebody else in danger. Right? Pennyfeather, the old guy, the leader of the resistance, what was he doing? He was getting all these children, essentially, and going, no, you go do it. She's dead. So he doodles a face with long dark hair and then scratches it out. And notice what his mind's doing. It's going backward in time. Further back. Okay? So he draws a doodle. What does the doodling remind him of? Art teacher. Ms. Lutyens. And he can't remember what she looks like. But he thinks of her. Why does he think of her?
She tried to save him, and she got punished for it.
And she was fired. She didn't act out of self-interest. Martha Underwood didn't act out of self-interest. and she died. Arthur Underwood only acted out of self-interest. And the rotten bastard got what he had coming to him. Okay? So, he's, off in La La Land. He doesn't respond to the questions that are asked. Okay? So, what does John propose? And I think part of the reason why he proposes it is because he's not all the way there. He's not 100% in this meeting. Part of him is thinking what? Of those other people that he's known who acted out of not self-interest. He says, let's use the staff. And and he finally says, why don't we? Top of 105. That's the point. With the staff, Gladstone conquered Europe. It will do the same to Boston easily enough. Our friends in Paris and Rome will hear about it, and they'll duck down. Meaning, we won't have a problem in Europe either. Problem solved. Once it has crossed the ocean, the whole thing would take no more than a week. Why keep the staff under lock and key when it's the solution to our difficulties? And the Prime Minister shuts him down stone cold, because I do not choose to use it. Notice what the Prime Minister is implying there. If anybody's going to use it, it would be me, because I'm the Prime Minister. And yet, what do we learn about the Prime Minister's first book?
He's kind of weak for a magician.
Yeah, but also, how did he become Prime Minister?
His master killed the other.
His master killed the previous Prime Minister, and it's implied. And that previous Prime Minister, either himself or his master, killed the previous one. He's kind of saying here, and I'm not going to let any of you take me out either. Okay? So, Bartimaeus goes off. He watches. He sees Jenkins. I'm skipping a whole bunch. Yeah, let's skip a whole bunch. Go up to chapter, not 2, 11. No, 2 ones. My brain is fried. And she reads from another book, and she reads about Ptolemaeus of Alexandria. Okay? Child magician, born into the ruling Ptolemaic dynasty, nephew of Ptolemy VIII, blah, 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 blah. Mention is made in an Alexandrian, page 131. Alexandrian manuscript of a sudden deterioration in his health following a difficult journey, though this is at odds with other records that state he never left the precincts of the city. He's definitely recorded as dead by the time of his uncle's funeral and his cousin's accession to the throne, 116 BC. Okay? Ptolemy is a figure of historical interest, next paragraph, since he is credited with the invention of several techniques, etc., etc. Okay? So she starts to think, what's this difficult journey? And so she asks Mr. Buttons, what was the gate of Ptolemy? Top of 133. Ridiculous notion. Myth, figment, barrel of moonshine. Save your questions for subjects of value. But, and she leaves. So, I don't know if you guys are aware. Can you think of any other works of literature, popular literature, children's literature, where someone says there's a thing that exists and everybody else says, no, it doesn't, no, it doesn't, no, it doesn't. And then it turns out it does. There's a thing called the Philosopher's Stone, first book. There's a thing called the Chamber of Secrets, second book. It's thought to be totally mythological, and in the Harry Potter series, turns out it's not. Okay? And what happens? In both those instances, in both cases, people are told there's no such thing as a Philosopher's Stone. It's a myth. It's a legend. Don't worry about it. Why? Because they're trying to divert them away from it. He's doing the same thing here. He doesn't want her to get, involved, so to speak. Okay? So, Kitty goes on to the bar, to the pub, and She meets up with a couple of the old members of the resistance, George and Nick. Okay. And they're talking. It's what people do. Get a few beers in them. And they start talking about the good old days of the resistance and such. And Kitty says, or Kitty thinks, bottom of 145, talk was useless. There had to be another way. Talk of what? The resistance. There had to be another way. She's not talking about we need bigger guns. She's thinking of this Ptolemy's Gate thing. Perhaps there was. It was time to carry out her plan. Okay? Meanwhile, chapter 12, Nathaniel's still at the mansion, and because he's been burned, shut down by the prime minister, page 147, he's thinking, to hell with politics. Its conventions smothered him. He felt like a fly caught up in a choking web. His whole life was spent appeasing Devereux, fighting off his rivals, an utter waste of time. Someone was needed to steady the empire. Someone had to defy the others and use the staff. Now that's kind of dangerous thinking. So he's thinking of it. He goes off. Quentin Makepeace. Let's keep skipping a bunch. Bartimaeus shows up. And what does John do before part 3 with Bartimaeus? He's been told to go find Hopkins, right? Find out what he's doing, come back. He's come back. That must mean he's fulfilled his task. What shape is he in? Literally, what shape? Frog, but almost more like a blob. He's just kind of oozing away. And Mandrake dismisses him. He sends him back to the other place without getting the information. Farrar, bottom of 157. Her eyes flashed darkly. She stepped close. Mandrake caught a sudden wave of pomegranates. That's her perfume. With a hint of lemon. I would have thought, she said, that you valued my regard rather higher than the spilled slime of a fading demon. That creature failed you. It was charged to bring you information. It could not do so. Important intelligence was there for us to take, and you released it. What does she mean, there to take? We could have forced it out of him. Yeah, it would have ended up killing him. But I deal with my slaves in the manner of my choosing. Part 3. We go back to Alexandria. Okay? So, we see Ptolemy. We see his cousin, his fat cousin. And the cousin kind of challenges him. And on pages 164 and following, the cousin not only challenges him, but he kind of says, I know about you, I know about your demon, etc., etc. And the cousin says, I will hear no argument, the slave will die. But Ptolemy is kind of like, nope, don't think so. Then I must tell you. And he looks directly into his cousin's eyes and says, you will leave him alone. He is my slave. I say he deserves no punishment. Leave with your lackeys and return to your wine vats. Your presence here disturbs the scholars, brings no credit on your family. Your insinuations likewise. Do you understand? And he just backs away. Jedi mind trick of sorts, you know. So, he goes to step past. The king's son totters, utters a word. He lurches forward, pulls a knife, lunges at Ptolemy. I raised a hand and gestured, a muffled impact, masonry block landing on a bag of sweat pudding. The king's son doubled over, clutched a solar plexus, mouth bubbling, eyes popping, sank to his knees. That is, he essentially gave him a sucker gut punch. Okay? What's this telling us? Why include this? What has Ptolemy just done?
Wait, is Ptolemy punch?
No.
I got confused.
Bartimaeus did.
He's defending him like an equal.
He put his life on the line for Bartimaeus. Okay? So he and Bartimaeus talk. In page 169, he says, "You've saved my life." Ptolemy says, "You saved my life twice now. You know how great find words. They don't mean nout." He says, "You know what I'm aiming to do. You know what I'm trying to do." He said, "Yeah, but you're not going to do it." Okay? So, the chapter ends with Bartimaeus saying to Ptolemy, because Ptolemy's talking about what he's going to aim to do, "I don't follow you." Some of you, I wrote that on your papers. I don't follow you. That is, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay? I don't follow you. What do you mean? "Oh, you won't have to follow me. When I'm ready, I'll be following you." Now, has he spelled it out clearly? Nope. Does Bartimaeus understand? Not yet. But he's going to follow Bartimaeus. He's going to go into the other place, we're going to be told. All right? So, Nathaniel starts thinking of Bartimaeus' condition, page 174. Its small, broken body had shocked him too much. It prompted an impulsive decision. He's got a lot of work to do. And the train of thought from the previous night, he's now thinking about again. And he sees Mrs. Lutyens. What's his train of thought? He can't remember what she looks like. So what's he want to do? He wants to find her. He wants to figure out what she's up to, what she's doing. Which will come up later. So let's skip a bunch more again. He meets with Makepeace. Let's see here. 182 and following. They've captured a commoner. Who is it? Nicholas Drew. Who's that? Member of the resistance. Who, just a few nights previously, saw Kitty Jones at the bar. Okay? So, 182-83. What has Makepeace done with Mr. Drew? He's put a spirit inside him. Mandrake. Feat is morally dubious. That is, okay, it's a weird experiment, and as if magicians worry about morality. This fellow is an unwilling victim. Besides, he's a commoner. He cannot properly use the demon's information. He said, "You're right." He said, "But don't you understand the point? The implications are immense." Bottom of 183. "Notice how I entered the pentacle unharmed. The demon was powerless to stop me since it was within an altogether different prison. Now I wanted you to see this, John, with the utmost urgency because I trust you." Okay? The figure cries, "Help." Mandrake, he's suffering. The demon must be dismissed. In a moment. Okay? Because what can they make the demon inside the person do? 184. A fighter from the old resistance lives. She lives in London. They can make him speak. Make him tell the truth. I have seen her hours ago. Makepeace like, "That's all ancient history." John's like, whoa, stop. Rewind? Say that again? Who? What were Kitty Jones? Oh, now he's mad. Bartimaeus lied to him 3 years ago. So, chapter 14. Time, as I may have mentioned once or twice, does not really exist in the other place. Even so, you know full well when you're being shortchanged. I had scarcely been reabsorbed by the nourishing energies of the maelstrom when I felt the cruel, and he gets sucked back. For what purpose? Tell what he knows about Hopkins? No. What's Mandrake asking? Have you been summoned by a woman? What? Okay. This is 187. Have you never been summoned by a woman before? The girl said tartly. It's not John. It's Kitty. And he's like, how did you do this? He, Bartimaeus. Okay? So they talk. She tells him this is my first time, etc., etc. Page 192, she says this is the means to an end. That is, I'm not summoning you just to summon you, just to get a demon. I'm not like a magician. Could have fooled me. She says, I don't want to subjugate enslaved spirits. What's her point? I want you to listen to me very carefully, Bartimaeus. He says, okay. She says, I've learned all this over 3 years. You set me thinking, page 195, with all your talk of civilizations come and gone. Above all, you said there were patterns to look out for. I knew how to find them. Okay? So, Ptolemy adjusts himself. And she says, I know terrible things can happen if you get the incantation wrong or misdraw the pentacle or something, etc. She says, we more or less teamed up last time, didn't we? Page 197. You know, with the golem, you told me what to do. I did it. Good partnership, etc. He says, yeah, but, I was still enslaved then. I was still... She says, we didn't have anything in common, or we had nothing more in common than that. Bit of chin wag, true, etc., etc. She finally gets around to saying, excuse me, as they keep talking, he lets the name Nathaniel slip. And she says, who's Nathaniel? He said, I didn't say Nathaniel. Bottom of 199, she says, because he says there's no connection between demons and the people who summon them. What about you and Ptolemy? Kitty knew immediately, chapter 15. Her theory had been correct. The Jinni's response told her so. Since his accident at the margins of the pentacle, the young Egyptian boy had been facing her, chest and chin thrust out, hands sweeping this way and that. As soon as she spoke, all this blustery and bravado ceased. A great stillness. Only the eyes moved. Slowly. Very slowly, pupils shifted to fix their gaze on her. Kitty found herself staring into them. It was like looking at a clear night sky, all black, cold, infinite. In one sense, what's she really peering into? Look at the rest of the description. It was terrible yet beautiful. She was drawn to it as a child to a window. If you're drawn to a window, what does a window always do? What's a window's entire purpose? To see through. To see what's on the other side.
Is she seeing his soul or his essence?
No, the other place. She's seeing kind of where he comes from. That's why it's beautiful and terrible. When she gets to the other place, what's the initial reaction going to be? Not beautiful. Terrible. Utter fear. But once she kind of calms down, when she literally collects herself, her essence, which is just spreading all over, and she congeals it into a ball, then it starts to make sense. She had been sitting safely in the center of her pentacle. Now she half uncrossed her leg, leaned forward, supporting herself on one arm. Notice, she's getting close to the line. He's still in his pentacle. It's like she's being drawn to this. What do you presume a voice said to know about me? It had sounded all around her, not loudly, but very near at hand. Very different voice than that she had heard before. It spoke in English, strange inflection. What do you know? Here's something I hadn't noticed until last spring. Whose voice is that? Is it Bartimaeus mimicking Ptolemy's voice? Or is it because Bartimaeus and Ptolemy are one? Or, another possibility, is Bartimaeus channeling? Is that the right way to put it? Make sure I don't get it reversed. Or is Bartimaeus channeling Ptolemy from the other place? Because Ptolemy did make the gate, and he did go through. Notice where the voice comes from. It doesn't come from Bartimaeus. See, we never see an instance, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we ever see an instance where Bartimaeus kind of plays ventriloquist and makes his voice come from back there. It's always coming from whatever form he takes. Here, it's all around. It's like in the space. The Jenny's lips were still, that is, he's not speaking. She lowers her head. Something in the voice unmanned her, but what? It did not speak violently or with anger quite. It was a voice of power. Child's voice. She lowers her head. She doesn't look in the eyes. She lowers her head and shakes her head. Tell me. Now there's anger. And there's a great noise in the room, a thunderclap. Same time, a great wind rose up around the chamber, whirling all about her, faster and faster. Meanwhile, Bartimaeus is what? It's kind of like, the lotus position, It's going on and on and on. Kitty says, stop, please. And it stops. All was quiet except the boy in the opposing pentacle was moving now, bending his legs slowly, then sitting with abrupt finality. His eyes were closed. If you're going to summon jinn, you summon their history with them. It's wise to keep matters firmly in the present for fear of what you might awaken. It's his nice way of saying, don't ask me about the past. She says, there's no need. You didn't need to do that. That was mean. I merely mentioned a name. You ought to know what names can do. Well, what must you do to summon a demon? You got to know the name. How important is Nathaniel's name? It's extremely important. So she mentions Ptolemy. Where is she? She's in a pentacle. Bartimaeus is in a pentacle. And that's like a summons. And it's, I'm here. Why do you persist? She says, if you're so keen to keep matters in the present, why do you keep taking his shape? What makes you think I'm wearing anyone's guise? Now, surface level, you can read that to mean that he's saying, I am Ptolemy. I'm not who you think I am. Kitty, yeah, but you don't generally go around as a king-size hamster. You always revert to the same dark kid in a loincloth. It's someone from your past. I worked out who. Where did you go from? Yeah.
Is it possible that Ptolemy's and Bartimaeus' essence mixed whenever they went into the other place? That's what you're trying to get at? Or maybe not trying to get at, but do you think that's a possibility?
I think that's a possibility.
And then that happened with Kitty too afterwards. Whenever he came back, and that's a lot of the reason why he helped out.
Oh, see, I didn't think of that before.
Because he wasn't going to help until she went over there.
Right.
And then she went over there, they helped, and then.
Well, what? Okay, let's jump to the end. Let's jump to that. Why did she have to go over? Have to.
To show trust and to
She had to show the trust. Because Bartimaeus several times throughout all the novels, she's like, come on, you're talking about trust. Come out of the circle. Come out of the pentacle. Erase my line. Come on, trust me. And what's the first rule? Demons are evil. They're going to try and trick you. Which is what, by the way? It is propaganda. Okay? Though, if it's for quarrel, I don't think I'd be smudging the lines at all. Okay? So, Kitty says, took me a year to find the mention, the last mention, etc., etc. So, she goes on, you weren't always Bartimaeus and such. Page 205. What do you want from me? Let's get down to it. What do you want? Now that her guests had been confirmed, Kitty found her perception of the Ginny skies had completely changed. It was a curious and disconcerting thing to realize she was looking into the face of a real boy 2,000 years dead. It's not a guy's. This is Ptolemy. This is the real Ptolemy. Previously, she had viewed the guys merely as a mask, a costume, one illusion among many. Now, while acknowledging that's true, she could not help but sense the ancient presence. So it's true, but it's not true. It's still Bartimaeus, but it's Bartimaeus and Ptolemy kind of thing. I don't think she works out yet if it is the case that it really is the essence of Ptolemy with him. I'm not sure yet that that's the case. Okay? But if it is, I don't think Kitty realizes that yet. The demon was reproducing the boy accurately, she had no doubt. For the first time she notices moles, etc., etc. There's a devotion to detail that could only come with genuine affection, perhaps even love. Okay? She says, I just want you to listen. Okay? And Bartimaeus says, in all my centuries of existence, my burden, not one single magician has been interested enough to ask about this, guys. See, that's where she has him. She has him exactly where she wants him. He's like, you've piqued my interest. Why do you want to know why I take this shape? I have no motives but wickedness and temptation. Through general fear and a desire for self-preservation, they, magicians, never ask me anything. He goes, but you? Okay. So, the boy says, page 207, he was 14 when he died. 8 world empires have risen up, fallen away, etc. They keep talking. Page 209, Kitty asks again about Ptolemy. He was unique. That is, why do you keep, he was unique. He was the exception. Don't bring him into this. He disproves everything you've said. Everything that is he said about magicians. Sure, it would be difficult to persuade most demons. Difficult could never be done. That's what you said about me learning enough to summon you. Irrelevant. What's she getting at? Kitty says, you just told me, let me back up. Kitty says, no, Bartimaeus. Even if I wanted to help you, page 210. Even if 100 other jinn, almost as potent as me, shared that sentiment and wanted nothing better than to cast their lot in with some oat-brained humans, we couldn't. Because the only way we can come to Earth is through summoning. That means losing free will. It means pain. It means obeying your master. There's no equality. Kitty, rubbish. It doesn't have to be that way. Of course it does. What's the alternative? See, he opens the door to the question, what's Ptolemy's gate? Every summons binds us. Would you be happy to give us control? She says, if that's what it took. No, you wouldn't. Yes, I would. No, you wouldn't. Yes, I would. And Bartimaeus says, middle of 211, well, how about it then? She said, you just told me what you'd do if I broke the connections. Oh, don't pay any attention to that. I was just kidding. Let's see your trust. Come on, prove it. It's not about the trust, Kitty says, top of the next page. You'd simply dematerialize. You can't stay on Earth without the power of the summons. Right? And he says, don't have any time for fantasies. And Kitty gets burning angry. 212. At this, a great rage surged through Kitty. Memories of the last 3 years swam before her eyes. The spirit was rejecting her ideas out of hand. She had worked out details, many issues to be resolved, but clearly some kind of cooperation was both possible and necessary. She felt close to tears. She says, so that stupid Egyptian boy, fighting words, was good enough for you, was he? You put your faith in him happily enough. Then why not me? What did he do for you that I couldn't? He followed me to the other place. But it's not impossible. It's just not done. I don't believe it. You don't have to. In other words, I don't care what you believe. What Ptolemy did was unique. I wouldn't ask it of anyone else, not even, did it kill him? Why does she ask, did it kill him? He plants the idea. No, then what price? My essence is a little vulnerable today, Bartimaeus says. I'd be grateful if you'd keep your word and let me go. That is, I'm wasting. She says, I will. Tell me. Ptolemy doesn't have to be unique. I can do this. Okay? She says, I'll read Ptolemy's notes for myself. Top of 214. Oh, you understand ancient Greek, do you? Give it up, Kitty. Ptolemy's long gone. The modern world is dark and complicated. So, he gives her the idea, and she runs with it. Page 217. Okay, now I'm really going to skip. Last time we saw John, what was he thinking of? Ms. Lucian's. Page 217. He had no allies. He had no friends. He'd lost support of the prime minister. 2 days, if he survived, he'd be on trial before the council. In other words, for John, how's things going? So, he has a thought. Top of 218, occurs to him quickly. He gets in the car, and he goes off. 219. And there's Mrs. Lucian's. He stops, rolls the window down. Can I have a word? What do you want? Ooh, just chat. Recognize you. I wondered if you recognize me. Oh, yes, I do. Nathaniel. I don't suppose I can use that name. Yes. She stands looking at him. I saw you. Well, it's been a long time. Yes. I thought, how are you? I'm well. Do you have a name I can use? Okay, so what position does he have in the government? Minister of Information. His picture's blasted all over places. She doesn't know who he is. That's a slap, by the way. She's doing. He explains, I'm Information Minister. Okay. I thought you'd be pleased to see how well it's all turned out. That is, your teaching of me. I thought you'd be pleased to see how well I turned out. After last time, wasn't so good. I was grateful to you, wanted to tell you, grateful then, still am. For what? I didn't do anything. When Lovelace attacked me, she says, that was a long time ago. So you're the Information Minister. You're the one responsible for the pamphlet things they're giving out at the stations. Yes, that's me. The ones that tell us what a fine war we're waging and how only the best young men are signing up for it. That's it. That it's a man's job to sail off to America. The ones that say death is a fit price to pay for the survival of the empire. Well, it's not quite what I'm saying, but yeah, it's close. Well, you've come a long way, Mr. Mandrake. I don't suppose you usually see your pupils again. When they've grown up, I mean. No, my job's with the children, not the adults they become. And so he asked her, are you happy? I mean, happy with your job, with your status? I can open doors for you. I can get you a better job. I can get you a job in the war ministry. You could be designing pamphlets and posters. She's a good artist. You get a rise in status. He says, we've created an advertising department to better put across our message to the people. She says, by the people, you mean commoners? Yeah, that's what we're calling them now in public. The people. No, thank you. I'm quite right. All right as I am. I like my job. He says, you have to get on. I understand. No, thank you. You are very kind. Her face was stony. Very well, if that's the way you feel about it. It's been a pleasure seeing you again, John says. And then finally she says, do you really think that I'll want to tell the world that I once saw you, the great John Mandrake, our beloved information minister, hanging upside down with your bottom in the air? Because he asked her, you'll keep all that secret, right? That I heard your yelps and wails of pain as cruel men beat you? You think I'd do this? No, I mean, that, your name. It may surprise you to know I've got better things to do with my time. Yes, even I, with my silly little unimportant job, don't have a great desire to betray the children I once worked with, no matter what they've become. Notice what, not who. What does she mean by what?
Especially not you.
Yeah, she's saying, you're less than you were when I had you as a pupil. Your birth name, Mr. Mandrake, is safe with me. John, you're misinterpreting what I'm saying. I didn't come here to cow over you. I just didn't get a chance back then to thank you. No, I think I do understand. So he's talking to her like she's a commoner. Well, you're too stupid to understand the language I'm using. She says, I do understand, and I'm pleased to know it. But you mistake yourself. It was the boy who was grateful to me, and you are no longer that boy. Why? He's John Mandrake. You do not speak for him. We have nothing in common. For Ms. Lutyens, what happened to Nathaniel? He died. He died a long time ago. This guy is not him. Yes, I wanted to say, I know you were trying. She says, yes, I know. And I'm sorry I didn't. She's sorry she didn't save him? Save him from what?
Becoming a monster that he doesn't like.
From becoming John Mandrake. What happens as a result of this? Because that's almost, it's not quite, it's almost the exact center of the book. That's what really puts the fire in his belly. He's not going to stay the same. He's already disgusted with the council, right? He's already disgusted with the government. He doesn't have a plan. He doesn't have any allies, okay? But it's from this point on that he's kind of, come hell or high water, I'm going to be me. Page 227. Bartimaeus is back. And we're told, the end of that first long paragraph, Mandrake was normally defined by his rigid self-control. Something seemed to have stripped all that away. And Bartimaeus says to him, you're a mess. You've lost it big time. What's happened? All your guilt and self-loathing suddenly get to you? Can't just be that someone else called me, surely. No. What's happened? He's had a moral crisis. So, he and Bartimaeus go back and forth. They talk about Others wanted to kill off Bartimaeus, and John mentions Kitty Jones. And he's like, oops, uh-oh. So they keep talking. Bartimaeus tells him what he found out about Jenkins and such. Chapter 18, she's back with Mr. Button, and she asks him about the other place. He explains what it is, page 240. She says, so no magician's ever been there? He says, oh, well, not exactly, blah, blah, blah. So it hasn't been done. Well, it's been tried, etc. Right? And it comes down to the issue of trust again, top of 241. Because Button says, who would trust a demon? Bartimaeus had emphasized exactly that. Page 242. A cloak of injustice lay upon London, and she, like everyone else, was smothered by it. The council did what they pleased, oblivious to the suffering they caused, and she was unable to do anything about it. She goes off to the Frog. What's the Frog? It's the pub that she was at the previous night, that George was at, and Nick Drew was at. Who meets her? Mandrake. Why? Because Nick Drew, possessed by the Spirit, told her about him. So, Kitty and Mandrake go off, and they talk for a long time. He says, I'm not here to arrest you, page 248. She talks to him about his power. Your power is based on slavery. It's just the demons, etc., etc. He says, you're right, but they're just demons. She goes, oh, so that makes it better, 249. And he finally asks her the question that's been plaguing him, really for 3 years. Why? Why did you save me? I don't know. I really don't know. He tells her, put your coat on, you're getting soaked. Like you care. Okay, she means that facetiously, sarcastically. You don't care about me. But he does, and that's why he told her to put it on. Notice he's not thinking of himself, he's thinking of somebody else. Well, whatever your reasons might have been, don't even say it. Don't thank me. I did it without thinking. If you want to know the truth, I've regretted it ever since, whenever I've seen your hideous lying leaflets, etc., etc. Okay? 250. He asks her, why does Bartimaeus take your shape? Is there some affection between you? He regards you with, there's no affection between us. Why did he tell me you were dead? He said the golem killed you. So I've not, he said that? Because I treated him with respect. So he invites you to the theater. And that's where it all starts to unravel. Okay, 45 minutes. Let's skip a bunch. So we see what happens at the theater. They get ambushed, essentially. We see the government get taken over. They go back to Westminster. And we're going to pick up with as they are the members of the government, as they are calling the demons into themselves. Let's see here. We see Nuda, however you want to pronounce his name. And Bartimaeus is meanwhile trapped in the fish soup, but he comes back and he makes a deal with Nuda to save John and Kitty. pages 346 and 47. But because now he gave his word, he agrees. Or save John. Chapter 25. Kitty, no, not chapter 25. Let's just go on to the gate. Where is it? Just too much to try to cover in one night.
Do you hear other lectures on the YouTube channel going into more detail?
Yeah, they do. Because I spend 3 85-minute classes on it. She goes in page 374. Yeah, 374. No, take that back. 375. 374 is reading about it. A distant sound came to her ears, a clear bell ringing that summons the demons, perhaps, or survivors trying to alert the city. Nathaniel had saved her from the mercenary's knife. She continues hearing the ring. Was invisible. Kitty opened her eyes. She glimpses 4 barriers all around her. They towered above, plummeted to below. Page 376. What are the 4 barriers?
Earth, air, fire, and water.
The 4 elements. What's she doing? Going through them. She's going through the nature of matter to an immaterial place. Scale, chapter 28. Scale and direction were impossible to determine, as was the passing of time. She had no fixed point, no singularity to call her own. Now that can mean she had nothing she could point to. Why? Because there's nothing to point with. You go to the other place and what happens? You become one with all of it. It's all part of you. And it's full of what? A whole bunch of other yous that are there. That's why it's chaos. Okay? There's no order. There's no structure to it. So she tries to fix on a fleck of color, but she can't. So she thinks, stand still, stand still. Was it her imagination? Page 379. Or had a little portion of the flowing coil deviated. Okay, so she can make a shape. How? Because of her mind. So she makes a shape. So now she makes herself a body. It's not a great body, but it works. Okay? She cries out, Bartimaeus, where are you? 382. And she sees voices, hears voices, and they say, Kitty, come back to us. She sees her parents. Go away. Kitty, we love you. Go away. Other pictures flash. Page 383. There's Pennyfeather. Don't leave me. Bartimaeus, she cries out. You always did try to be independent, Kitty. Jacob Hernick's voice. Why not just come up? Come and join us here. Poor child, you'll see. You are not as you were, etc. She keeps calling. And we hear, finally, page 384, hello, Kitty. Get lost. Why? Because everything that's come to her, she's essentially said, get lost. And there I was thinking you were asking after me. Bartimaeus. But then we get chapter 29, and we're back with Nathaniel. All right? So what does Nathaniel do while she's doing this? He goes and gets the staff. He has to fight the guy with the 7 things. Page 396. The imp comes back in, and Nathaniel finds Kitty, and he's like, oh, Kitty. Because there she's lying there, she's essentially frozen. Okay? So, chapter 30, Kitty in the other place, talking with Bartimaeus about a whole lot of stuff. Ptolemy and such. She tells Bartimaeus what Nathaniel's going to try to do. And Bartimaeus agrees to what? Come back.
Inside the body.
And take a space inside John. Skip Alexandria in 1 whatever it is, BC. Come back to the present. 425. I would never have done it had it not been for the girl. She had been quite correct back there in the other place to appeal to me in Ptolemy's name. She'd renewed his bond. Okay? So, he comes back, and he comes back, pain was gone. Page 427. That was my first sensation. That was all that mattered. It was like a curtain had suddenly been flung open. Everything had gone from dark to light. My essence surged with a terrible joy, the kind I hadn't felt on earth since my first few summonings. I let out a cry of triumph. My essence was immersed, page 428, in bone and blood. Little thready things I thought might have been sinew. Okay? So, we have both Nathaniel's consciousness and Bartimaeus' consciousness, and they kind of internally talk back and forth. So what difficulty does that present for Nathaniel as we see it presents for each of the ministers? You get this new thing inside of you, and what happens?
Can't control you.
Because it doesn't know how to walk in this thing. Because the bodies they take aren't real flesh and blood. They're phantasms of flesh and blood bodies. If you shoot a demon's body, the form it takes, if you were to shoot Bartimaeus when he appears as Kitty, an arrow would go right through it, and it wouldn't bleed. Okay? So now he's got to figure out how to walk. But only if what happens? See, why are the other ministers all having problems?
Because you have to cooperate, and they don't want to cooperate with the demon because it's their slave.
Because the demon's taking control, but the demon doesn't know how to control the bodies because the demon doesn't know how to control the brain. But Nathaniel and Bartimaeus are both in control. See, when the demon comes in the other bodies, it takes control. So now, Nathaniel's like, let me do the walking, and Bartimaeus kind of learns on the fly as it works. Yes?
Isn't that exactly what commoners and magicians need to do?
Explain. I think I understand exactly what you're saying, but
One needs to not be in power of the other. They need to work in tandem and not, because when one's trying to put power over the other, they can't walk. But if they both work together, then they'll have a government where everyone flourishes.
it's cooperation.
Yeah.
Nice Greek word that's used lots of times today by corporations and such. Synergy. Hand in hand. Working together. Okay? It's exactly what they have to do. And that's exactly what Kitty's aim ultimately is. To get commoners and magicians to work together. One of you, can't remember who it was, wrote a really good, might have been the A, essay about, had something to do with friendship. It was, I think, one of the lessons that Taryn learns. And what's he learn? He can't do it on his own. Dalton tells him that in the first book. And that lesson keeps getting repeated again and again and again throughout the novels. So, what? Oh, I thought you said something. So, they go on and they take on all the others. We're going to, I know it's 8:24. We're not going to stick around till 9. Let's go to almost the very end. I am going to post links to the things if you want. So they make their way following the chief demons, Nauda. I haven't figured it out yet where we're going to go. Probably 474 and 75. He's got the staff. Can Nathaniel use the staff on his own? Why not? He's not strong enough. But with Bartimaeus inside him, he can really rock and roll. Okay? So, they hear Kitty's voice, page 475, Nathanael watched her coming slowly through the garden. Across the 7 plains, her aura lit the ground like day. A group of people straggled close behind, that is, she's leading commoners. Kitty, Nathanael, they look at each other. His mouth opens with a wrenching noise, something like a belch. And me, don't forget, that's Bartimaeus. Nathanael swore, clamped his mouth shut. Kitty grins. Hello, Bartimaeus. I thought I told you not to come with us. You're too weak. It's too dangerous. When have I ever listened to you? We've destroyed most of Nauto's army, but he himself is still at large. Nathanael says, deal with him. Notice, Bartimaeus was talking. Nathanael cuts him off. Have they already thought what they're going to do? Not quite. Okay? So, Kitty blinks. Nathanael shifted the staff, page 476. Thin bands of energy pulsed and crackled around his hand. He felt a surge of joyful impatience. He would destroy Nauta, rescue the commoners, and return to Kitty. This is Nathanael thinking. What's Kitty now become? She's a motivating factor. He's doing this not only for the commoners, he's doing it so that he can return to her. Okay? So, they make their way to the glass palace. What's that thing called? Glass building where you raise plants. It's not a greenhouse because it's a huge one. There was one in London in the late 19th century for the World's Expo. It's called the Crystal Palace. Okay? It was huge. And then they took it all apart so that it no longer exists. So they get there and they tell Kitty, you ought to stay out. Okay? Page 478. There are times when even a near omnipotent genie knows to keep his mouth shut, and this was one of them. I wouldn't have got anywhere. Skip the next paragraph. But the main problem was the way they played off each other. Okay? Simply put, their mutual presence spurred each other on. Who's the they? Nathanael and Kitty. It's like each one is drawn to the other. And they're trying to outdo the other. Why? Some of this is just good old adolescent hormones. They're trying to impress each other. Trapped as I was inside Nathanael, I could certainly see how the girl inspired him. That is, he sees inside Nathanael's mind and heart. Perhaps I can't vouch for Kitty so much, but in my vast experience, strong characters of their sort tend to gravitate. Pride has a part to play with it, other emotions too. Neither wishes to fail, each redoubles their effort. Things get done, not always the right things, not much you can do to stop it. So they're kind of impelling each other forward. They're still going after Nuda. In 481, we hear Nuda. Nuda's in a lot of pain, or Nauta, however you pronounce his name, we're never told. He's angry at Fakwarl, because it was Fakwarl who essentially talked him into this. And page 483, Nathanael and Bartimaeus have a detonation thrown near them, and we're told Bartimaeus now for the first time experiences pain as a human experiences it, which is different than a demon does. The boy cried out, and I cried with him. For the first and only time, I shared a human's pain. Something in the feeling, perhaps it was the dull immobility of the flesh, the way it just sat there, accepting the wound, made panic ripple through my essence. In other words, for the last 5,000 years of Bartimaeus' existence, when he's been brought to earth and he's felt pain, what kind of pain has he felt? Not our pain. He doesn't know what it feels like to cut a finger or to be stabbed. His pain is the pain of the immaterial becoming material, being bound. But now, he's experienced what for the first time? Which means he understands. Now, he's identifying with human reality. What's one of his what's been one of his big beefs all throughout? Humans don't understand what it's like. Yeah, well, neither did demons understand what it was like. Nathaniel now understands. Kitty understands. She went to the other place. Okay? Now the shoe's kind of on the other foot. So both sides are essentially doing what? They're having to stand in the other one's shoes. They're both getting a changed perspective. Okay? Page 485. Things aren't going well. No, take that back. 484. Nathaniel says, Bartimaeus, my side, I can't feel it. It's fine, don't worry about it. You're concealing something. That thought, what was it? Nothing. I was thinking we have to get up, get away. We hear a voice, where are you, Bartimaeus? My side feels numb. I can't relax. I'll see if I can fly us out. No, wait. Nuda. He's a big boy, he can fly. No, we got... You idiot. Nathaniel, let me take over. Okay, so the two sides are arguing within what's not going to happen well. They're not going to work well. There isn't any point. Why does Nathaniel say there isn't any point? Yeah. He's numb because he's bleeding. What? I read your mind just now. Oh, look, I'm no medic. Forget it. I could be wrong. You're not. Tell me the truth for once. Oh, there's Kitty. Why there's Kitty? Not literally, because obviously Kitty's there. What's that meant to do? Don't talk about, face her from this. Hi, Kitty. Don't let her see. So, her hair is matted, disordered, etc., etc. She comes in. They tell her the attack with the staff failed. Things are too strong. Tried it at maximum controllable power. Maximum controllable. It's like it's got, a button, and it's got, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a red button. Don't ever press the red button. That's the uncontrollable power. What will happen if we leave now to now? Nathaniel asks. He'll get bored with the one world exhibition. He'll turn his attention to the rest of London. He'll feed on the people, so swell in size and power. The city will get destroyed. What's the implication? And once he's done with London, the rest of England, maximum controllable power. There's one way of getting more energy from it, and that's by removing Gladstone's safeguards, the spells that bind the staff. Now, hold on, listen. All its power would be unleashed in one fell swoop. I think that might give Nowt a pause. She goes, no. Bartimaeus, can't you? He says, you got to think of one other thing. What's the building made of? Glass and iron. Iron, Nauta, being a spirit, is not protected against it. That is, iron hurts spirits. It also does in the other Lockwood book for some reason. He's got to have done some weird research into, I don't know, demonic.
He might be a hack off
natures.
We're finding out.
Okay, so what's his idea? Get him inside the great big glass building that has an iron framework. Crush it down on top of them. What's the problem with that?
Inside of it.
We have to get outside before boom. All right. How do you break the staff without being harmed? Kitty asks. What about the roof fall? I'll take care of it. Okay. I'll go with you. No. You go outside. Your protector shields won't extend out that far. Will they, Bartimaeus? Wink, wink, wink. Oh, no. We'll be all right. What's Nathaniel already thought through? Because he's smart. Okay? He knows he's dying. What else?
He's going to sacrifice himself.
He's already worked it out. Himself, not himself and Bartimaeus. Bartimaeus hasn't figured that part out yet. I don't know why. That's a flaw, I think, because he ought to understand Nathaniel's thoughts. So, Nathaniel says, we'll catch you up on the outside. Just keep running. Nathaniel, go, Kitty. She says, I'm not going to allow this. Listen, I'm the magician. You're the commoner. I make the order. He's being facetious. Okay? He's got the 7-league boots, so he can move great distances. Okay? Kitty goes outside. She hears the voice, page 490. At that same moment, she was conscious of a noise, a dull bulbous sound that seemed almost to swallow itself. Flaring, she looks back. The glass palace, glow of orange, and destroyed. Hold on a second. Did I skip? No. Chapter 38. Dying was the easy part. Our main problem was catching Newton's attention. So, they get his attention because Bartimaeus essentially calls him a bunch of things. And they get him to go in the building. And page 499. The longer it takes, the better. Kitty, she'll get out, don't worry. The boy's strength was failing. His resolution was undaunted. I felt him summon his remaining powers. Steadily, calmly, muttering under his breath, he loosed the bonds restraining Gladstone's staff. Until they break out, they're pushed, they're restrained, etc. According to some, footnote, those who don't have to do it, heroic deaths are admirable things. I've never been convinced by this argument, mainly because no matter how cool, stylish, composed, and flappable, manly, or defiant you are, you're still dead, which is a little too permanent for my liking. I've made a long, successful career. Okay? So he goes on talking about himself and Ptolemy. Nathaniel, Bartimaeus, notice it's a thought. It's not a spoken word. Yes, you've been a good servant. You've been. You have been. This is called a present perfect form of the verb tense. It begins in the past and it continues to now. In the past, you were a good servant and you are still a good servant now. All right? So, I like you, is essentially what's he saying. What do you say to something like that? I mean, 5,000 years. You've been just dandy too. I didn't say you were perfect. What? Far from it. Let's face it. You've generally managed to cock things up. British slang. What? Well, since we're straight talking, which is why I'm dismissing you. Totally off guard. Because while he is dissing him, he says, I'm going to free you. What? Don't take it the wrong way. It's just that we've got to break the staff at the right moment here. You're holding it in check. You, in me, are keeping the staff bound. So if I get rid of you, boom. This is the only way it can work. I can't rely on you for something as important as this. You're bound to mess it up somehow. Best thing is to dismiss you. Now, why does Nathaniel say you're bound to mess it up?
Just wants to try and save him.
That's exactly what it is. He doesn't want to admit the love he has for Bartimaeus. That'll trigger the staff. Then I know it'll be done properly. Notice, we go from italics to non-italics type. Why? He drifted. He stopped thinking. Is it just because he's run out of ideas? in and out of consciousness. In other words, better do it soon. Nathaniel, he calls him Nathaniel, not John. Say hello to Kitty for me. Who says to say hello to Kitty for me? Nathaniel. Bartimaeus says, Nathaniel, dash, and then we get, say hello to Kitty for me. Then now there was upon us, mouths open, tentacles slashed down. Nathaniel finished the dismissal. I went, staff broke. Typical master. Right to the end. He didn't give me a chance to get a word in edgewise. Which is a pity because at that last moment, I'd have liked to tell him what I thought of him. Which is, you fill in the blank. Mind you, since in that split second we were, to all intents and purposes, one and the same, I rather think you knew anyway. What was it? I think it's clear, okay? Now, a question that some people have had after this book, after the end, because we've already seen Kitty afterwards, right? Because chapter 38 occurs before the last stuff we see with Kitty. She's helping the government reframe, they're bringing commoners in. It's going to be government of equality for the people, by the people, of the people kind of a thing. Some people have wondered, does Nathaniel live? Does Nathaniel figure out in those last few instances how to get to the other place? I don't see how. Personally, I think this is one of those stories you got to take the good with the bad. And the bad is sometimes the good have to die. It can't always end like Disney ruins fairy tales. Because in almost every fairy tale, they are not the ending that we see in the Disney versions. I mean, yeah, Cinderella does get Prince Charming, okay? Sleeping Beauty does get her Prince Charming, etc. But for some of the other people, it's not all that good. For Cinderella's sisters, in order for them to try to marry the prince to get their feet in the slippers,
Don't
they cut their toes off, they cut their heels off. It's pretty gruesome.
In one of the sisters or whatever they are, one of the stories, they get their eyes picked out.
Yeah. Hansel and Gretel actually, burned the old witch in the oven and such. Okay? So, a couple of the topics that you have on this, and like I said, I will, for those who want, I'll post links to the videos of the lectures I've done for this class and my other classes where I don't skip nearly as much. One of the questions is, one of the topics you can choose is, what do you think is the overarching theme of all three books? If there is one, and then, argue for it. Pick one of the books. Another topic, I think, is, pick one of the books. And what do you think is the theme of that book? Another one of the things is to,
Okay.
Trying to remember.
Question. The one where it says pick one book, how do we then include quotes from the other two books?
I think in that one, I say you need to do like 4 quotes from that book. So you don't have them for the other two. I'm not positive. Okay? You don't, if you do the theme on one book, you don't have to have quotes from the other books. Okay? I'll take a look at that again tonight because I already know somebody pointed out I put April 12th as the due date for this. It's not due April 12th. It's a week from tonight. I'll fix that too. All right. Sorry for the haphazard, scattered discussion for this book. It's not how I like it to go.
The giant greenhouse building, it's called a conservatory.
Conservatory. Thank you.